love with the hardball sport, following games over the radio and watching them on her family's 13-inch black and white Zenith. Vanessa is an Oregonian who moved to Bend when the Bandits were still taking the field off Wilson Avenue. She continues to attend summer baseball games at Genna Stadium, travels to Seattle to watch Mariners versus Yankees games, and has recently returned from Tampa, Florida, where she attended women's fantasy baseball camp, playing ball with a few of her favorite Yankee greats. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for sharing your local baseball history with us. Thank you.
I love baseball. When I was 9 years old, I got the bug and I've never been cured. I love the smell of the grassy outfield, the feel of the ball in your hand, the crack of the bat, and knowing that I've made it to first base safe. There are heroes and villains, there are Goliaths and underdogs, speed chases, drama. It's only a game where the offense doesn't have the ball because you are up to bat. It's the only game I know of that records your errors, much like in life. And you never know what's going to happen, so you must stay till the very end, even if it means going into 14 innings. You don't need much in the way of equipment. You need a bat and a ball, you need a place to play, and you need some friends. On warm summer days, we'd play in old Mr. Talbot's Comfrey field. It didn't matter if we had enough for a team, we just played however many players we had. We'd use rocks and t-shirts for bases. We took turns batting, and we'd play late into the evening until it got dark and we couldn't see the ball or until someone got hurt. Tonight, you are going to hear just a very small portion of the 120 years Bend has had a baseball team from 1903 to 2023. There is still a lot to learn, and there are still so many unanswered questions that I have, and so many rabbit holes I still have left to explore. The umpire's calling, batter up. You need players to make up a team, and you need two teams to play a game, and if you have more than two teams, you can build a league. Living east of the Cascade Mountains, communities were far and few between. Prineville was the largest town, right here. And at its incorporation, it had close to 400 people living there. By 1900, it had grown to 656. It was the team to beat. Town teams, baseball for Prineville, was generally against another Prineville team. The baseball game last Sunday between the Old Boys and the regular nine resulted in an inglorious defeat of the latter. For the credit of both clubs, we refrained from publishing the score. July 4th, 1891, Ochoco Review, Prineville. If you got tired of playing other teams in town, then you had to travel a fair amount of distance. Teams like the Dalles, Moro, Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, and Shanneco. In 1900, a new railroad spur ran from Biggs, Oregon to Shanneco, opening up new possibilities. By 1903, there were more small communities in Central Oregon, and those small communities were bringing forth baseball teams. The citizens of Dufur, as well as many of our other interior towns, have already taken steps towards organizing baseball clubs for the coming season. This year, 1903, will be a hummer in the baseball world. Prineville has the material and should have a Cracker Jacks club. January 29, 1903, the Prineville Review. That same year in October was the first World Series between an American League team and a National League team. Boston Americans beat the Pittsburgh Pirates 5-3. In Bend, its population had grown to 250 from 21 just 3 years prior. In April of 1903, a month after the new Bend Bulletin started publishing a newspaper, a baseball association was being advertised in the paper. They wanted to start a team, and they wanted an organization that would help manage the team. Management meant you paid a fee, in this case 50 cents, and those fees went towards gear, field maintenance, and money in the pot for tournaments. 30 fellas showed up interested, and some even paid that 50 cents a go ahead. But the Bend team was a slow grind. It didn't really get momentum going. It had heart, but its skill was not so great at that time. And Bend back then meant Bend, Lytle, and Deschutes, two other smaller communities that eventually got absorbed into Bend by 1912. The Deschutes Echo newspaper at that time reported that the Deschutes team was not great on fielding, but their batting was strong. Nothing more than practice couldn't fix. Bend had hoped to play Prineville that year on July 4th, but Prineville, being the team, already had a matchup with the Warm Springs team. And so instead of playing Prineville, Bend played a scrub team. Scrub team, just another group of Bend players, and it was much like a scrimmage. The Bend Nine literally wiped them off the face of the world. The score was 2-16. Bend hoped that maybe, I think they should have actually asked the Bend Beauties instead of another Bend male team to play. In November of 1903, we had a women's hardball team here in Bend. The women were still playing despite of the weather, and the Bend Bulletin reported the Bend Beauties Baseball Club. The approved uniform was black bloomers and red sweaters. Iva Donkel was the best pitcher of this notable team, and the only one of who the batters, Iva Donkel was the best pitcher of this notable team, and the only one of the batters who made any pretense at hitting her curves was Iva West, who holds the batting record. Miss West was also the most superior catcher. Minnie Birdsong and Bessie Donkel were frequently substituted in the box, and they twirled the sphere with great dexterity and effectiveness. First base Mary Young, perfectly at home, and no runner ever got past her with hat on straight. Marion Wiest had the judicial role of umpire, and she still lives, though she has been the cause of numerous heartburnings and great quantities of tears. Playing sometimes partook of the nature of town ball rather than the regulation baseball. For town ball, they could find sufficient opposition in their own ranks. The fact that a game was rarely finished was due entirely to the inefficient length of the days, and not, as some have alleged, to the propensity of the girls for discussing the fashions and the beauty of their companions. They avow their determination to resume the sport next season, those who are not married yet.
Should we ask questions as you go?
You can. No, you can ask questions.
Oh, well, did the ladies' team you're speaking of now play on the same field, do you know offhand, as the men play, or they have different fields?
Yeah, they would have. So back then it wasn't like an official field. It would have been an open field. Yeah. So they would have all played.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vanessa, were they playing where Weimar is now on that old field?
No, I'll actually mention that a little later. Yeah, that's the Bruin field. That was the high school field. Yeah, that would have been in 1930s when that got built.
I'll wait till the 30s then.
Okay. So a year later in 1904, Bend had finally have their first game with an out-of-town team. And that would be Prineville. and Prineville beat them 14-8, but not without commenting that the game was the first of the season and 2 bad innings lost the day for the locals, being Bend, and several Prineville rooters admitted that in the next game, our team, being Bend, is likely to come out in the lead. And that was the Deschutes Echo.
Did it?
Well, the uniforms that the Bend team wore were bright red shirts and pants, black stockings, and white caps. Bend was lettered in blue braid across the shirt fronts, and they were called the Bend Reds. There was talk about forming a league. Antelope, Prineville, Madras, and Bend wanted to form the Crook County League. And later, Redmond, Alfalfa, Laidlaw, Sisters, Grass Valley, Haystack, Metolius, Cloverdale, Lamonta, and many others would join that league as well. And even when the circus came to town, the circus had a team that would play the local ball teams. Now, by 1916, a lot of changes started to happen. Crook County wasn't Crook County anymore in the way that would have worked with the Crook County League. Because in 1914, Jefferson County was created and Madras became the county seat. And in 1916, Deschutes County was created and Bend became the county seat. So the league team changed names to Central Oregon League. And that same year, you had Brooks Scanlon and Shevlin Hickson Lumber Companies become residents of Bend on either side of the river. And a new baseball field was built. The O'Donnell Field was built off of 2nd and Greenwood over by where Miller Lumber is today. Here it is right here. This is Greenwood. You can see here's Greenwood right here. This is actually the canal, and you can see the canal in this picture right here. Here's the railroad where the parkway is today, and you can see that on the 1928 Sanborn map. So the big deal about this field was that, like I said, up until this time, they were playing baseball on lots, empty lots. They weren't groomed very nicely. And one of them Troy Field today, where Troy Field is located down here off Bond Street, that would have been part of a bigger lot. And then it was in the newspaper talked about they had a field out by Levi Weist's house off of 3rd Street over by where the Pretty Pussycat is today. And so this field was also, it was designed specifically for baseball, but you would also have circus and the rodeo would be here. The big deal about this was that it had grass, it had grandstands, it had a clay pitch, and eventually it would have fence all the way around it. By the 1920s, the mills were booming. The boys were home from overseas. Bend still was playing in the Central Oregon League. That meant there were more people here in Bend. That meant more players trying out for the team, and that meant more quality playing to choose from. The teams in the Bend 9 was a very good baseball team. Far from how it started out, it was an exceptional team. But that wasn't the only baseball going on here. You had business leagues, the Twilight League. They would play after work until it got dark. There was the high school baseball teams. Both mills had teams. There was indoor baseball being played over at the Bend Amateur Athletic Club over what is now the Boys and Girls Club today. Baseball, as much as it's recreation, was a business. It's not like today where you can get in your car and go over to Eugene or Corvallis and watch a game and drive home the same night. You would get in your car or your buggy or however you're going to get somewhere. You're going to go over to watch a game. That game usually was a series of 2 or 3, so you're going to stay the whole weekend. Most games were played on a Saturday and a Sunday. So that meant you needed to spend money at a hotel or a place to stay. You spent money at a restaurant for food. Since it's a larger town, sometimes you might stock up on goods that you need. You would have still needed to buy your baseball tickets, any kind of concessions, and of course there was gambling going on at all of these games. 1926 was another major change. Hold on, let me just, 1926, we now get a semi-pro team. Baseball is like church. Many attend, few understand. Hall of Famer Leo Droscher, 1994. In 1926, the Bend Elks organization, a fraternal order here in Bend, announced that they were going to take over the managing and the Bend Nine. And what that meant was there was a lot of money being pumped into this team. They ordered uniforms, and they were white with purple. They were, their first several games, they actually didn't have the uniforms show up in time, so they had to wear the Brooks Scanlon uniforms. But money meant new gear, new uniforms, better field maintenance, league fees, so you could get into bigger leagues, and it also meant you had money to travel. That year in 1926, the Bend Elks, for the first time called the Bend Elks, joined the Mid-Columbia League semi-pro team, and it was Bend, the Dalles, Hood River, Duffer, Condon, Goldendale, Wasco, and White Salmon. The closest team to Bend at that time was Wasco. And the big concern by the lodge was, we're investing all this money, will they be good players? Let me tell you, they crushed it. Hood River took the pendant, but Bend and Goldendale tied for second in the Mid-Columbia League. What was super cool about the Mid-Columbia League is that it was part of a bigger league called the Oregon State League. And since 1926, our semi-pro team pretty much stayed within the Oregon State League. Now, the Elks supported it in 1927, but by 1928, for whatever reason, they decided not to sponsor the local nine, and instead the Bend Eagles, the Eagle organization, stepped up and backed them. And that year, the Bend team was wearing the city's emblem on their jersey. The team was the only semi-pro team east of the Cascades to enter the Western Valley League. So pretty much everybody else would have been east of the Cascades, which meant they would have had to travel over Santiam to get to us, and we'd have to do the same. Like past seasons, the Eagles were a strong team and made it to the division final. The game was to be played in Eugene, and it would be played against Silverton, outside of a team outside of Salem. Now, Eugene was calling itself neutral territory, and it actually sent an invitation to Bend, the people of Bend, and the paper said, Eugene extends a cordial invitation to the people of Bend to attend the championship baseball game between Bend and Salem Sunday. Please leave weapons at home. We have plenty here. We are neutral and we'll see that justice is done. Come, enjoy the contest. So that Sunday, Bend and Silverton play in Eugene. Bend beats Silverton 16-12 and is crowned the Willamette Valley League champions. Well, the Oregon State tournament would then be played the next Sunday down in Medford, because Medford won their league. And so Saturday comes and the team heads off to Medford a day before the game, and without 4 players. 4 of those players, 4 of their top players, including their pitcher, decides we're going to go separate and we're going to drive down in our own car. So Sunday comes, the team show up at the Diamond to play, and they're missing 4 players. And you can only postpone the game for so long. The game starts, and the catcher for the Eagles now has to pitch. So who are you going to get to catch? Well, Deschutes County Deputy Sheriff Davis steps in as the Eagles catcher. They lose the first game. They're going to play the best of 3. They lose the first game to Medford, and then by the middle of the 5th inning, the 4 players, Parker, Murphy, Hepton, and Woods, show up. And without any warm-up, they step in, and Woods pitches, but they still lose. So they lose the championship. Their car had broken down outside of Sand Creek, and they stayed up all night trying to get it repaired so that they could make it to the game, but they totally blew it. It makes you wonder, if they had arrived, would we have gotten championship that year? The other event going on here was with the opening of Central Oregon, with the train arriving in 1911. Now Central Oregon was accessible, and for baseball that meant more teams that could come and play, and that also meant new leagues that they could be a part of. And that also meant exhibition games. And one of those exhibition games, you'd often get a visitor from the Portland team. So the Pacific Coast League team, or the Portland Beavers, and for those that have read Brothers K will recognize maybe the Portland Hub that Chance joins. That was a AAA league, and what AAA mean is in minor league ball. That was the league right before the big show, before you got pulled up to go play in the major leagues. And players such as Joe Gordon, Ted Williams, and Joe DiMaggio were just a few players to come out of the Pacific Coast League. So when the Portland Beavers came to play, both Bend and Redmond businesses shut down, the mills shut down. In this particular series, they were playing 3 games. The Eagles lost both of their home games and ended up tying down in the Klamath Falls. But because it's a non-league game, it doesn't really count. It's just for fun. But still, you've got a minor league semi-pro playing a very close to major league team. So this was a huge, big deal. Popular during the early 20th century, barnstorming tours in baseball meant long road trips crisscrossing the country in automobiles, buses, and just stopping briefly in town to play the local 9. Barnstorming tours made it possible for players and teams to supplement their income. In segregated American baseball, barnstorm teams also allowed black athletes an additional outlet to play competitive baseball and demonstrate that black baseball players could compete and win against white baseball players. Exhibition games were scheduled against professional teams, semi-pro teams, local teams, and other barnstorming teams. Communities large and small filled the grandstands to watch these exhibition games. Usually they would arrive much earlier because there was usually a warm-up going on the field, and that warm-up included a game of shadow ball, a pantomime of the baseball game where the players hurled an imaginary ball so fast the crowd believed that they could see it. The New York Broadway Clowns. So this right here is in our collection. In 2013, when we were putting together a baseball exhibit, a gentleman brought this in. He had found it in his shed. It was in the walls of his shed. What this is it's like a hard cardboard announcement that businesses would put up in their windows announcing the game coming up and who was playing and what time and where it was going to be. Well, you can see we only have half of it. It only tells us the game was on Tuesday. It does tell us that one of the traveling teams was going to be here, so we could kind of narrow it down a little bit. We discovered that on July 29th, 1930, the New York Broadway Clowns were going to come to Bend and play the Bend Eagles.
Were they black?
Or not the Bend Eagles, the Bend Athletics. They were a black team, yes. They entertained the crowds with exaggerated ball and handling and dramatic play while executing a high caliber of baseball. And that afternoon in July, the Bend Athletics handed the New York Broadway Clowns a rare loss with a winning run in the bottom of the 9th inning for a final score of 9-8. The New York Broadway Clowns were not the first black baseball team Bend's Local 9 would play, nor would it be the last. Bend also hosted the Chicago 9, Piney Woods Collegians, Washington Browns, and the Kansas City Monarchs in 1941 and 1949. And I still, if I do enough research, believe that Satchel Paige may have been here in Bend in 1941 because he was on that team that year. And Satchel Paige is one of the best pitchers in baseball history. In 1903, so another team that would come and play in Bend a lot were the barnstorming bearded ball players, the House of David. And in 1903, these guys got established because their leader had a dream and believed that he was meant to unite the tribes of Israel before Judgment Day. And so followers came and gathered in Benton Harbor, Michigan, turning all their worldly goods over to him and signing a promise to not have sex, not smoke, don't drink, and not to shave.
Or cut their hair off.
Right, they couldn't shave or cut their hair. And so within a very short time, he had built up a colony of 50 members of this House of David. Well, to raise money, the House of David began staging baseball games. And they would have, they did this at their complex, and visitors would come in and watch the games, and they would take these games out on the road. And it was a lot like watching, if you go to a basketball game and you watch the Harlem Globetrotters. They were very talented and doing crazy stuff, and they even had sometimes professional ball players playing in their group, disguised. So like Babe Ruth actually played with these guys, the House of David. He would wear a fake beard and go out and play with them.
Is he in that picture?
He is not in the picture here, no. So in around the late 20s and throughout the 30s, the House of David would travel through and come to Bend, and they'd stop at the Dalles in Medford, Hood River, Salem, Albany, and here. And on a Sunday afternoon, the bulletin announced that they would tuck their manes under their caps. The House of David was going to face off against the Bend Eagles, and the local fans had filled the stands eager to see these long-haired fellows play ball. They said the game was fast and exciting throughout, with result in doubt until the last House of David player struck out in the 9th inning with men on second and third, and only one run needed to tie the score. The final score was 7-6, with the Eagles dishing up the House of David, only their second loss in 1 week. By the end of the year, the House of David had won 110 games out of 106 games and had traveled 23 miles via automobile. They, like I said, they would return over and over and over again to play Bend's baseball team. And one year in the 30s, they had a special guest with them. Grover Cleveland Alexander, Hall of Famer pitcher, who had played for the Philadelphia Phillies, was here in Bend playing with the House of David against Bend's own 9. Now, again, you think, oh, the Eagles, we've had the Eagles and the Elks, and then the Elks would sponsor again. It would go back and forth and back and forth. Well, in 1930, the Eagles decided they didn't want to, for whatever reason, they weren't going to manage the team. No other organizations stepped up. And so the Bend businesses, because baseball is a big income maker bringing money into the community, said, we want a team. So they went to the players and said, hey, will you go in with us? You'll get paid from ticket sales, but we want a team. We don't have a lot of money. And part of not having a lot of money meant they didn't have uniforms that year. Well, it's a good thing that some of the players on the team knew guys over in Portland. The Portland team that year was actually owned by the Philadelphia Athletics. And in 1929, actually in 1928 and 1929, the Philadelphia Athletics had won the World Series. So they basically said, look, we have these uniforms that you guys can use. How many do you need? And they sent a note, a wire, over to Shabe Park over in Philadelphia, and the uniforms were sent directly from Philadelphia to Bend. And they came with some names in red on these uniforms. In fact, the Bend Bulletin, April 19th, 1903, headline, Bend team to don uniforms of athletics. 11 of the Philadelphia uniforms bearing in red on shirt and trousers such world famous names as Simmons, Fox, Cochran, Bishop, and Earnshaw arrived here this morning direct from Shabe Park. The big league uniforms were used in the World Series game between Philadelphia and Chicago last fall. They're all in excellent shape and when cleaned will pass for new garments. Some of the extra uniforms were eventually worn only a few times and have not been stained by Eastern diamonds. The uniforms are gray and the socks are blue with white stripes. All shirts bear a large English letter A in blue. The athletics letter will not be removed by the Bend team, and it is probable that the local 9 will bear the name Bend Athletics. The uniforms were secured by Bend team for $10 an outfit. When new, these uniforms cost around $50. So this was not only, right, do we get a Bend team that year, but they're wearing World Series uniforms. They are part of the Southern Oregon League team, and they would open April 27th against Klamath Falls in Klamath Falls. To me, these uniforms are the holy grail of Bend baseball. I would love to have one. I would love to find one. I would love someone to donate one because not only are you getting Bend baseball history, but you're getting Major League Baseball history. In 1938, the Elks were the Elks again, and they're back in their Elks uniforms. And on July 4th, 1938, Bend Elks were playing the Portland Babes on O'Donnell Field. Grandstands were packed with spectators, and a young Jim Farmer, a new hurler, right here is Jim, for the Bend Elks was on the mound. He perched beside him was the plate umpire, a 50-year-old man resembling Ty Cobb. Actually, yes, it was Ty Cobb, retired center fielder for the Detroit Tigers and 1936 Baseball Hall of Famer inductee. So how does one of baseball's greatest players find his way to Bend? Well, Ty Cobb had a long-standing relationship with the Georgia soda company Coca-Cola. And in his early years as a baseball player, Cobb endorsed the Coca-Cola product, both being from the state of Georgia. Later, he would buy stock in the company, making more from his dividends than his sports salary. In 1940, retired from both playing and managing, Cobb purchased 3 Coca-Cola bottle plants, one in Idaho, one in California, and one in Bend, located at 134 Greenwood Avenue. Now, one might speculate that the reason that Ty Cobb visited here in 1938 was to scout the location of his new investment. We don't know that for sure, but we do know that he was visiting his good friend S.O. Johnson in Prineville to do a bit of fishing. And as it was July 4th, he was known to sometimes come up and watch the game. And in this instance, the Portland, he was umping for 3 innings. By the end of the 4th of July afternoon in 1938, the Portland Babes got beat by the Bend Elks 4-1. And what a delightful bonus for the crowd to have the famous Cobb ump for those 3 of those innings. Now, to play in Bend meant you needed work in Bend. And so with 2 of the largest pine mills in the country in your backyard, work often meant, was often with Brooks Scanlon and Shevlin Hickson. Now Jim, right here, Jim Farmer, he had played for Lewiston, Idaho, in the minor league ball in the Western International League a year earlier. So he was kind of considered more a pro than some of these guys. Jim Farmer and many of the players on that 1938 team had long relationships with Bend and the Bend Nine, and both as players and later as coaches and managers. And they would stay playing for over a decade here in Bend, many of them. Yeah?
On just the prior slide, the bottom newspaper headline
Mm-hmm.
called them the Bend Athletics.
Yep.
And then in 38, now it's the Bend Elk.
Right.
So somewhere in there, the name got put back.
Right. So it all depended on who was sponsoring the
Money
team.
That year or
Right.
5
So
years or whatever.
so we had the Bend Elks.
Right.
They were Bend Eagles. The Bend Athletics because of the A's on their uniforms. And now at some point, the Elks decided they were going to sponsor them again for quite a while. So it just depended on who was sponsoring the team. Because again, you needed money for the uniforms and all of the stuff that went along with that. Now in 1947, the paper announced the Bend Elks baseball team will hold its opening practice of the year tomorrow afternoon on the new municipal baseball field on South 4th Street at 2 p.m. The Elks hope to field one of the finest teams in their history for this year's competition in the Oregon State League, according to Jack Gordon. Now, 2 things are important about this statement. First, yes, Jack Gordon, brother to Joe Gordon, Hall of Fame second baseman for the New York Yankees and the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, lived here in Bend and played baseball here in Bend. The second was the opening of the new baseball field for the city of Bend. And for decades, the O'Donnell Field had been the home of our baseball team. But it was getting worn down. And so the city was considering building an industrial warehouse on the site. So the local teams needed a place to play. By this time, they did have the high school field, Bruin Field, out by where Bimart was, but in order to play on that field, they had to have permission from the school board. So they wanted something that was a city field where everybody could play. And so in 1946, the property was purchased by the city commissioners, and they spent $6,000. And in 1947, grandstands, grassy field, clay infield, proper fence, all were laid, and the Bend Elks started playing on the field here. And you can see here's Roosevelt Avenue. Back here is where we would eventually have Wilson. You can see this is where Wilson would be. 97 would be like right here. So this is the field that they still play on today. In 1948, lighting was added for night games. 160 1,500 watt bulbs were turned on for the first time in April. The Bend Elks' first night game was May 22nd, Oregon State League game against Albany. The municipal field would get a major makeover in 1960s and renamed Genna Stadium in 1972. All right, so once again, now we're in the 50s, want to keep playing ball, but the Bend Elks pull out of their longtime sponsorship of the team. They no longer want to do this at all. This is it. 1949 would be their last year. So within a month, or a week of saying we're not going to sponsor, the Bend Moose organization say we're going to do it. So we go from being the Elks to the Moose.
Not mooses.
The Mooses. The Bend team started out the decade as the Bend Moose and later the Bend Loggers when Leonard Lundgren's, the local mill owner, took over the team. The Bend Moose and the Bend Loggers continued to be strong contenders in the Oregon State League, but due to employment issues, a drop in enthusiasm, most of the times they didn't finish the whole season. And a season was like from May to September. So they would start off strong, and that first half they would be the top of the league, they would be winning, but then somebody doesn't have work and they need to work, so they'd move to another city, or the enthusiasm wasn't there. And so eventually we ended up not having a semi-pro team. And one of the other reasons for that too was the 50s, we were seeing a greater number of American Legion. You've got more people moving in. Now the emphasis is more on like junior play. So you've got American Legion and Little League and local ball and all of that, and more people playing that. And so that was starting to fill in where they weren't doing a whole season with this.
On TV maybe too.
Well, this isn't Major League Ball.
No.
So this wouldn't have been on the television. Mr. Baseball. When I see a kid in a baseball uniform riding his bike, his glove on his handlebars, riding to one of our parks for a game, that's what makes me a happy man. Vince Genna. Mr. Baseball. He was a talented high school shortstop who dreamed of playing for the New York Yankees in the major leagues. In 1942, his dream would come true, almost. In a single afternoon, Vince would receive 2 letters. One from New York Yankees office, offering him a contract to play professional baseball, and the second from Uncle Sam in the way of his draft notice. The Second World War would not suppress his passion to play ball. Master Sergeant Vincent Genna still found time to play baseball while serving as crew chief at a 15th American Air Force B-24 Liberator bomber base in Italy. With the 450th Bomb Group, his assigned aircraft was Deuce Wiles of the 721st Squadron. When he came back from the war, he moved to Salem, where he coached American Legion teams to 2 winning state titles. And in 1954, Leonard Lundgren, the same mill owner that took on the Bend Loggers, contacted Vince to come to Bend to coach the local American Legion baseball team. Lundgren used his own money to hire Vince in the position as the city's assistant recreational director. Genna would incorporate his experiences as coach, his passion as a player, and his great love for the game into his new position, transforming Bend and its baseball program for generations. In 1954, Bend, that first year, would take district title, and 4 years later would win the state title. During Vince's 36 years with City Park and Rec Department, he was instrumental in developing beautiful places to play, recreate, and enjoy. By his retirement, Bend was recognized nationally for its parks and wilderness areas. Thousands of boys and girls had participated in the city recreational programs, including expanding baseball and softball leagues for all ages. He designed, built, and developed the old municipal playing field into what it is today, honored in its renaming in 1972. And although he was never able to play ball in the major leagues. He was the driving force in bringing Major League Baseball to a place that would appreciate it. Vince Genna passed away in 2007, leaving a legacy of beauty and baseball in the high desert. In 1960s, Vince's development of the community recreation, the junior league baseball, the baseball, softball leagues, high quality high school ball are all things that led to the phase out of semi-pro league in Bend. Don't let the fear of striking out hold you back. Babe Ruth, Hall of Famer 1936. So now you have the professionals, the farm teams, the teams coming. The Bend Rainbows in 1970 and 71. In 71, we have Kurt Russell that came, but also we had Ed Cecil right here as pitcher. Ed Cecil of the American League State Championships in 1958. 78, the Timberhawks were here. And Vince was part of that. In 79 and 80, we had the Philadelphia Phillies come, the Central Oregon Philadelphia Phillies. The first time an actual place location was attached to a farm team name. They would continue on as the Bend Phillies from 1981 to 86, and probably one of the more recognized players of that team is right here. And that is, oh Lord.
Which guy? Up there?
My brain just, no. Oh no. No. Oh, no.
Oh, 70. 81?
No, oh.
70s or 80s?
Shush, just a second. Oh my gosh, why can't I think? Rick Shue was the big player for when it was the Bend Phillies. I'll think of it in a minute. This is terrible. I can't. He's right. He was the oldest player in baseball. I mean, he played for almost every single.
Benny Minosa?
No. I'll find it. That photo is 79. That's the first year, and that was the first year that they actually they won the whole shebang that first year.
So which one is it that you're talking about?
I can't think of. It's right here.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and hold on just a sec. Ben Rainbows. I bet, yeah. No. It's totally left my brain. In '89, we had the Bend Bucks. So Tim Salmon played for California Angels. The Rockies were here in 92, 93, 94 before heading up to Portland in 95. Bend Bandits were an independent. They weren't associated with any team. And I should note that in 92, this was the first year for the Rocky franchise, the Colorado Rocky franchise. And so we had their farm team here in 92, 93, 94. Bend Bandits, an independent team, were here up until 1998. And in 99, the league changed. They eliminated 3 teams, and one of those was the Bend Bandits. So in 99, we didn't have anything here. But in 2000, we get the Bend Elks. And this is the 2000 team that year. They would go on to win In 2004, the Pacific International League Championship. And then it would change to West Coast League. And in 2015, the Elks won the West Coast League Championship. And of course, probably one of the most famous players to come out of the 2000-2004 Pacific International League is Jacoby Ellsbury.
Julio Franco.
Thank you, Julio Franco. Yes. Oh, it's Julio Franco.
Remember the player? Julio Franco.
Yes.
He played for the Phillies for several years, and like you said, a whole bunch of other places.
He played for Phillies, and then he went on to play for Cleveland. Really soon. I think he didn't play for Phillies for very long. Then he went on to Cleveland, but he basically played for almost every team in both leagues. Yeah, I mean
Yeah, he was a reliable player.
So yeah, and then. Start. Is it gonna start?
Wait, that's their turn.
There we go.
Oh.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, man.
How did you end up being a Yankees fan?
So I think a lot of it when you're 9 years old and you live in a household that's not sports oriented. The first introduction I have to baseball, where I'm really watching and following, was a Yankee game when I was 9 years old.
And you lived out here?
I lived here in Oregon, yeah. And Oregon doesn't have a professional baseball team, so you have the whole American and National League to choose from. And I ended up choosing the Yankees. And that year and the year after that, they won the World Series. And so in between little bits and pieces, I could watch TV. But my dad was not a sports guy. He didn't understand the value of sports. I mean, he never was. He read books, art and all of that, which I all love. I mean, I love reading and I love doing art and all of that stuff too. But yeah, so I would hang out in my bedroom and listen to shortwave radio and listen to the games on the radio and keep score. And when I got old enough to play summer ball, then I joined league, and I would ride my bike down to the field and get a ride to wherever we're going to play. And yeah, and I just.
You were playing hardball.
I was playing softball because by the time that I was 11, 12, girls couldn't play hardball. You could only play up to a certain period, and then you couldn't play with the boys anymore. So yeah, so when I started playing, it was all softball. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
So did you watch the game of the week on Saturdays then? As a kid?
I would watch. Normally, no. I did not have control of the television. I would listen to whatever I could on the shortwave radio, which actually was my brother's.
Shortwave radio.
Which, yeah, I'd have to, a lot of times, it's my brother's radio, and so I had to like either sneak it or convince him that this was important for me to do. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
When you mentioned town ball versus baseball,
Uh-huh.
what is town ball exactly?
So it's all baseball, okay? So the difference is that town ball is usually you're playing other teams in that town, or you're playing other, a lot of times it was a lot like the Twilight League. So it was like businesses and they're playing against each other, and the mill would have a team. So Brooks Scanlon and Shevlin Hickson would both have teams. Each of the businesses would almost have a team. There would also be, early on, town ball, you're taking all what your best players are from that. But then once you have like the semi-pro, those are like cream of the crop, and those are usually players that are coming out of town. to be here and get a job here and work here, or they could be homegrown, right? They've grown up here and they're really good. A lot of times they might have been college, like I'm home and for the summer, and I'm playing college for what's now Oregon State or University of Oregon or Willamette or whatever like that. But town ball was basically what it sounds like. Town players getting together and forming teams and playing against each other. And sometimes you'd play other town ball teams like over in Redmond or Prineville or that kind of thing. Okay.
When you mentioned like the circuses playing sometimes,
Right.
I was curious if they just did that like for fun, or if they'd actually make like extra revenue or money.
So I don't know.
Okay.
So I only know from a 1912 newspaper article where it talked about the circus being in town and that they actually had a team and they played the local baseball team. That's all I know. So my guess is baseball is the kind of thing where, yes, it's an organized sport, but you don't have to have a lot, right? You just need to have 9 players. And some play, so if you can get 9 players together and you want to play a team town, great. And so that the circus would get their 9 players and play. So I have no idea what they were getting out of that except the enjoyment of playing baseball.
I'm sorry, one more.
Okay.
I was really fascinated with the women team back in 1903 or so.
Uh-huh.
Were they actually called the Bend Beauties, and do we have any photos?
Okay, I have no photos. Yes, I read directly out of the newspaper. They were called the Bend Beauties. That is the only time I have found them. That one article in November. Possibly, maybe all of those women ended up getting married in 1904. Probably not. But the idea is that if you're married, that would not have been a respectable thing. So these are all single women that are playing baseball, and at the end of the article that the Bulletin printed was they avow their determination to resume the sport next season, those who are not married then. So I have not found any other articles about the Bend Beauties. One of the things I do want to explore is whether or not there were any women from Central Oregon that ended up playing in the All-American Girls Baseball League during the Second World War. Yeah?
You mentioned at one point when they switched from the Bend Elks to the Bend Moose that the Elks no longer wanted to do that, and you said altogether they just wanted to. Is there any evidence of like why that was, or?
So again, everything that I'm doing comes from newspaper articles. Unfortunately, I don't have a time machine that I can go back in time and watch these games and find out what's going on. So I can only pull what is told. So all I know from those articles was that they were no longer they no longer wanted to invest money into the team. And if I was to speculate, I would guess that initially when they got into it, it is a money venture. You would sell tickets to these games. Home team would take a bigger percentage of the ticket sales, and so it was a viable resource of getting money and bringing it back into the community. And so by the 50s, you're starting to see a team that's not playing full seasons. The players were certainly getting older and older and older, the ones that were staying on. Many of the ones in the 1947 photo I had, they had gone off and fought in the war and had come home. They were working. A couple of them had gotten picked up by Major League and weren't in it for very long. In fact, one of them headed off to Oklahoma to play in a minor league, to move up to get to Major League. He got homesick, and so he came back to Bend, got married, got a job, and raised a family out here. So that part of it was all, I'm guessing, was starting to decline with the rise of junior ball and the American Legion ball, and all of that is where the interest was. And so
fans out of the seats, so fans they all had to play on Saturday.
right.
And so they couldn't get to the ballpark.
So so I don't know, but I would speculate that yes, the investment was not as profitable for them. Yeah, hold on.
I actually saw quite a few of the Loggers games. I kept score out in center field, the scoreboard. I think I got about 50 cents a game.
Oh, wow.
My dad was base umpire. Wayne Hamilton was behind the plate. Night games and afternoon games out at Municipal. I'm not sure the exact years that I was out there. My dad's dad, my granddad, who I knew up until he died when I was about 7, was in the major leagues.
That would be Bill
His,
Douglas.
He went by the name of Klondike Bill Douglas.
Yeah.
And he was in the major leagues before there was an American League from, I believe, 1896 to about 1906.
Played for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, and they moved to Bend here in 1923, my dad's been.
To retire. Yeah, yeah.
Do you know if there was any men's fast pitch softball?
I don't know. So, so again, all of what I've shared with you is research that I've done mostly on my own time. This is my kind of pet project. So there's a lot. And there's so much baseball in this community. Whether it was softball, whether, like I said, it was kids. I mean, you could do a whole thing just on the high school baseball, right? So I don't know. And softball, the term softball shows up really early, but does that mean that they're playing with a softer baseball? I know. But the question is, I don't know enough about the history of the softball, so that when they talk about playing softball in the 30s, are they talking about the actual softball like we play with?
The big one is indoor. You can call it indoor.
Okay, well, we had indoor play here.
And the other one is a smaller softball, but it's a hard softball.
Okay.
That's the one that they.
Yeah, so there's a lot I don't know. There's a lot of, research that I can only focus on a certain area of that. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know much about the whole softball element. Any other questions?
Yeah, you made a quick connection between, I think, Portland, back when you were talking about how the Phillies kind of got involved with the Bend folks.
Right.
And I think there was a Portland connection that made the Phillies and Bend connect.
Right, so the Portland Beavers, being a AAA team, would have been affiliated with a major league team.
Right.
And in 1929, 1930, they were affiliated with the Philadelphia Athletics.
Okay.
So the Philadelphia Athletics owned them. So when they were contacted for uniforms, they would have contacted their main head office back in Philadelphia.
Got it. Thank you. I thought that was it. Just wanted to-
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Enjoy your book, Brothers K.